Librada Estrada, fellow CHCI alumni and co-founders of Si Tu Quieres, who will be leading today's webinar on strategic negotiation.
Thank you, Janet. My name is Ana Polanco. I am a co-founder of Si Tu Quieres and an alumni of CHCI. And I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about negotiations. And I'm going to turn it over to Librada, my good friend, CHCI alum, to introduce herself. Librada, do you want to turn your mic on?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'm happy to be here. As Ana shared, we're co-founders of Si Tu Quieres, CHCI alum, and I'll be asking your questions along to some of the ones that I have as we move forward through the presentation. Just to give you a brief overview of STQ, it's a space for everyday Latinas to set in motion their vision for leadership, change, and for success. And what we do, or how we communicate that, provide that forum, is through blogs, seminars, and presentations such as this one on leadership topics. For more information, you have our website in front of you. It's situquieres.co, or you can follow us on Twitter at STQLatina, or email us for more information at info@situquieres.co. And in case you're wondering about the PowerPoints after the presentation, they will be shared with you. So we invite you to just sit back, listen to what Ana has to share, and then the information will be shared with you after the webinar. Thank you, and now back to you, Ana.
Thanks, Librada. So just a little bit about me before we get started. So what makes me qualified to talk to you about negotiations? And, you know, there's a lot of material out there about negotiations, and I just wanted to share a few things about myself that I think make me really qualified to have this conversation with you today. And I think the first one is the one that we all share, right? We were all once children. And the truth of the matter is that children are the best negotiators. They know how to ask for what they want, and they'll keep trying multiple and different ways to ask for what they want. And so when you think about a child, a niece, a nephew, your own children in your life, or a friend's kids, watch how they negotiate, and maybe remember to a time when you were young and thinking about negotiation. The other thing is that I have my own consulting company, and so I spend a lot of time negotiating with other consultants, partners, clients. In my coaching work, I do a lot of negotiation with clients, getting them to stretch to a new edge and be powerful in asking for what they want. I also spent 15 years doing political and campaigning strategy work, and had to negotiate with hundreds and hundreds of organizations, political leaders, activists, to really position my organization to get what I want. And I've negotiated on my own behalf, right, to really get the promotions that I want when I want them, and so that's been critical. That's just a little bit about me. I'd also say that, you know, I've failed a bunch of times in negotiation, and I think failure is a great way to learn how to become a good negotiator. And so when you think about the key lesson there is to keep trying, right? Keep trying to negotiate. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're really going to cover these key areas. And what I want to say is we have lots and lots of content to cover today. We'll get to as much of it as we can. At the end, you'll get the slides, so you'll get the content no matter what. But we're going to really start off with changes in today's workforce and how it relates to negotiation, how to set yourself up to be successful in negotiation, and then really thinking about what it should look like during the conversation, including the pitfalls. At the end of that portion, we're really going to try to look at 2 case studies. If we can't look at 2, we'll look at 1. I want to invite you to ask questions throughout the session and also at the end during the Q&A. And then we'll do a quick review and close out. So let's get started right away. So today's workforce has really changed. how long people are staying in their jobs has really shifted significantly. Historically, people stayed in their jobs, 20 to 30 years. And in the last decade or so, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's really shifted to about 4.5 years. So what people value and how often they're really job hopping is key in today's workforce and will have a large impact in how you negotiate and how you think about negotiation. The second thing is values, right? Generational values. So people who stayed in their jobs for 20 to 30 years, were really with a cohort of their own generation or one other generation. And that meant that values were very similar. And in today's workforce where people are only spending 4 to 5 years in a job, we really have 3 to 4 generations in one workplace. And so values are going to be really different across those generations. And then the last thing is negotiation, right? So historically, negotiation was a sort of adversarial experience. Someone would win and someone would lose. And that's how we thought about negotiation in the workforce. Today, we're really looking for a new framing, a new framework which is around winning, right? How can we both win in the negotiation? How can we both be successful? So those are 3 things I want you to be thinking about as we go through the presentation. Okay, so let's first look at values. And what I want you to know here is, here you're going to see a chart. Let me get a little spotlight here. So here's a chart on the right of the slide that really looks at generation gaps and characteristics. And Ernst & Young, which is a big professional services agency, did a study in 2013 about characteristics by generation. And what they found was, there are some places, as you can see on this graph, where there's a lot of similarity or some generations are closer together than others, and then there's a lot of difference, right? So for example, Generation X and Generation Y may have a strong entrepreneurial characteristic, right? And so characteristics are really a symbol of a deeper set of values, which are the driving force behind how we operate and how we make decisions. The other thing that I want to point out to you is that, because these characteristics are reflective of value, they also are impact decision making and priorities, right? So how do I make decisions? It's really based on my values, based on the things that I think are important. How do I build relationships in the workplace? My values are impacted by that. So for example, if I really value self-discovery, particularly, when I was, and I do value discovery and self-discovery, when I was a manager, I would look for that in the people who were working around me and really see how they were taking discovery in their own way and moving it forward. So it's important for you to know what your values are, and it's also important for you to know what the values of the decision makers and the people on your team are. And that's going to strengthen your ability to build relationships, and it's also going to strengthen your communication. And the last thing is communication, right? So my values are really tied into how I communicate, not only verbally, but in my body language, the context in which I have conversations. And so what you communicate in a negotiation really matters. And we're going to explore that, a little bit later. So as you can see, getting to know your values, getting to know the values of the person that is going to make the decision about your promotion is really key. And giving the decision maker what they want is as important as getting what you want. So when we think about this as a win-win situation, we're really looking for that sweet spot. And if you look here at these concentric circles, we have your values, we have the decision maker's values, and then we have company needs, right? So the company has a set of needs that they're trying to meet on an annual basis. And the sweet spot is here in the center. It's you trying to figure out, you know, where is the win-win for all three, right? So how is my promotion really going to impact, you know, the company needs and the decision makers' values?
So Anna, you talked about that sweet spot right there. So how do you get to that point, or how do you identify that sweet spot?
Absolutely. So, oh, my screen is frozen. 1 second.
Can Carla move that?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you, Carla?
What do you need? You need me to go to the next
I
slide?
think the screen is frozen, yeah. Can you go to the next slide?
I can't because you are controlling it.
Oh, okay. It did it though.
Successfully.
No problem. It moved.
Okay.
Awesome. Normal technical issues. Okay, so let's keep going. So how do we get to that sweet spot? So what I want to tell you is that there are really 4 areas. Mindset, purpose, research, and planning the conversation, right? And so let's start with mindset. This is an area that we often skip over. So salary increase is a proposal and not a final offer. And I'm going to say that twice. Salary increase is a proposal and not a final offer. Most people get an offer and they accept it and they don't think twice about it. You know, they're usually not prepared. There's usually not a lot of preparation or research that's done in advance, and they don't realize that that promotion is a proposal from the employer or the hiring manager, and that the employer actually expects you to negotiate, right? Most people walk away with a 3% raise. That's actually standard in the industry.
So why do people walk away with that 3% raise, Anna?
Yeah, so, you know, people walk away with that 3% raise for 2 reasons. One is that they hear in the hallways at work that this is standard, right? That this is as much as we can get. But more importantly, people believe unconsciously that they don't have a right to ask. They don't have a right to ask for more, or they don't have a right to ask for a variety of things. So here, you know, you should be asking yourself, you know, what are some beliefs that you have about money when asking for a promotion? So what are some beliefs that you have, Librada?
Well, before, when I used to be younger, I used to think that I had to meet all of the deliverables before I could ask for more money. So one was I meeting the job, excuse me, description 100%, but the other was, had I proven myself, and like you just said, was I worth what I wanted to ask for?
Exactly. Were you worth what you're asking for? And that's a really common mindset. You know, as coaches, Librada and I come across lots of individuals who have different feelings of inadequacy about money, their relationship with money, limited thoughts about how money gets made, and how they can engage with it, and what is their self-worth in relation to money. So I would just ask yourself to think about, take a moment right now and just jot down on a piece of paper 3 things that you believe about money. And we're going to pause for like 10 seconds to let you do that. So 3 things that you believe about money, whether how it gets made or what you need to do to get that salary promotion. Okay, so you've probably written down at least 1 or 2 things by now about what you believe about money. Now, think about what those things are and how they're impacting how you negotiate, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life as well. So if you believe that money is hard, that you have to work hard to get money, then you're always going to work hard to get money, right? You're always going to work hard to get the promotion. If you believe that you deserve money and abundance and that it's all around you, then it's going to be easier for you to attract that money. So think about what is your relationship to money and to self-worth. Let's look at the next thing. So knowing what you want, right? So this is really, really common. So the second most important thing is, do we have a wish list? Now, I don't know about you, but for me, on my desk in my home office, I have a wish list. I have a list of things that I want to accomplish in my career, not just in terms of money, but status, and time off, because I want to, for me, one of my values is to have a balance between work and personal life, right? So these three things that I'm showing you here, the salary or the bonus, depending on whether you work in the nonprofit or the private sector, the job title, vacation time. When I worked in-house at different organizations, these things were really important to me. And they're not the only things that you could be asking for. Librada, what else could we be asking for?
For either professional development opportunities, training, ways to expand your benefits package. If you have young children, maybe more time off, or increasing your sick leave, or having your office pay for your parking in exchange for, or providing metro fare services, opportunities, etc.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, exactly. We want to have the most robust list possible. That's really what we're trying to get across here. So if you go into a negotiation and your only goal is to get that raise, whether it's that 3% or something else, you know, you're really limiting the possibilities that are available to you. So making a list of what you want, prioritizing it, and really figuring out, okay, once you've got that list, ask yourself, how will your life be better off if you get this list, right? That's really the first question. So how will your life be better off if you get, you know, 2 weeks of vacation time instead of 1? And then ask yourself, in that same example around vacation time, how will the decision maker or your boss be impacted, right? The person who's going to relate directly to you for your promotion or negotiation. So think about what you want and how it'll impact you in your life, and what they want and how it'll impact the workplace. And by doing that exercise, by having that information, you're really going to understand what are those things that you really value. So while you might be thinking, oh, I really want that 3% raise, you may secretly desire having a job title change and having more responsibility. And depending on where in your career you are, these things will shift up and down. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So let's look at research. Right? So here are 3 things that I want you to consider when you're doing research before you even start asking for your promotion. So who is the decision maker, right? Who's actually going to make the decision about your promotion or your raise, right? Is it your boss or is it someone else? Each organization, each corporate structure is organized and designed in a different way. You know, some managers have direct ownership over promotions and simply have to get them approved by HR, and others have to go to a pool of money centralized in the organization in order to get that. And so think about who's the decision maker, how are they going to, and if it's not your boss, you know, who else is that other person and what might they want? The other big question is climate, right? So we often don't think about organizational climate, but every organization has a culture and a feeling and an energy, and that's largely made up of the mood of the organization. And so think about what's happening in your organization right now. You know, is the organization doing strategic planning? Are they preparing for a reorganization? Are we in an upswing, right? Where are we? And then also think about the financial standing of the organization. And a really easy way to gather that information is to look at 990s. And 990 is a public tax document that organizations are required to file that tell you the financial status of the organization and what the top officers make. And it's a public document, so you can literally Google it and find your organization's name, 990, and look at the last 3 years and see how the organization is doing, right? So is the organization healthy financially? Are they solvent? Are they in the black or are they in the red? Having all this information is going to help you understand how possible what you're asking for, is. And so that's key. And then the third question is, are there guidelines governing your promotion needs? So when's the last time you looked at your employee handbook? I mean, the employee handbook has a ton of information that really governs promotions of all sorts, right? Whether it be the benefits we talked about, vacation time, and promotion. What it may not have in there is exactly how people get promoted. And it is totally and completely acceptable for you to go to human resources and ask them, how do promotions work here at the organization? What do they look like? What's the process? Who's going to make the final decision, right? And how should I be thinking about promotion? So human resource can be an asset for you in that way. The other thing to consider with company guidelines or organizational guidelines is there a union contract in place? Sometimes there's a union contract, and if you're part of a bargaining unit, that may have an impact in what you can ask for and how you go about asking it. So talking to HR, if you're part of a bargaining unit, talking to your union rep will help you understand those things. Okay, moving along. So planning for your conversation. I wanted to give you the simplest tool possible to plan for your conversation. And so here's something that I've used with clients and that I've used in planning organizational development meetings and negotiations that has really helped me get clear about what I want. And it's called the POP tool. And POP stands for purpose, outcomes, and process. And how I want you to think about this tool is in 3 steps. So the purpose, what do I want and why am I asking for this promotion, right? So by starting to write it out and really make a plan for yourself and put down the purpose, you'll start to develop talking points about what it is that you're going to be seeing when you go and ask for that promotion or that raise. And so we've done some of that, as you can see earlier in the session. We talked about values. We talked about making the list of things that are really important to you at this time in your life, and talked about gathering research and information about what the decision maker or your supervisor needs in this moment. So really think about your purpose. And the other part is outcomes, right? So what will I accomplish as a result of asking for this promotion? And then what outcome might be one that the decision maker wants? So when I was a supervisor and people would come and ask for a promotion or a raise or something, some kind of change, benefits change that they wanted, they would often say to me, I really want this raise, but rarely did people say, and this is how it's going to change the way I work, and this is going to how it's going to change how we interact and what I can do in the workplace. So really think about it from a win-win situation. How's this going to improve your own quality of life, right? Your professional performance, and how is this going to be beneficial to the supervisor or decision maker? And then the last thing is process, right? And this is something that I would say you could hold loosely as you're making your plan. So process is really what steps do I need to take to set this this whole conversation up. So maybe you're gathering research and information. Depending on the culture of your workplace, you may want to have this conversation in the office, or maybe you want to have it over coffee or lunch with your supervisor. So really think about how to set up the conversation for success, both the space that you hold the conversation in and you know, the environment and what's happening on that day. So historically, I've never had negotiation conversations on Mondays or Fridays. Now that may seem arbitrary to you, except I know that at most of the places that I've worked at, Mondays people are coming back and it's got the Monday blues, and Fridays people are really checked out. Tuesdays is when all the bills come in from all the consultants and all the organizations. And so I always ask for my negotiation conversations to happen on a Wednesday or a Thursday because that was prime for me. So think about your own, like I said, each office has a different culture. You've got to think about what's the best day to have a conversation that you want. And if you want to learn more about this tool, there's a link here that you can go to at stpproject.org to learn about all the different ways that you can use the POP model. All right. So we're flying through, which I'm very excited about. It means we might get to all of it. So during the conversation, let's talk about what's going to happen there. And lots of things can happen during the conversation, and this is the part where we absolutely get nervous. You know, sometimes it's nervous excitement, sometimes it's sheer fear of hearing a no. And I want you to know that if you follow all the steps that I've given you beforehand, you're going to feel really prepared and confident when you go in. And even if you feel scared, you will feel more confident than if you did no research at all. So taking all those steps that I've given you in advance is really going to position you in a positive way and really going to be helpful for your own emotions. So what are some things that we need to keep in mind? There are really three things that I want you to be thinking about during the conversation and in preparation for it. The first thing is managing your emotions. So something that happens when we start talking about this really uncomfortable thing called money or self-worth or title changes is that we become stoic. You know, we get nervous, we become really tight in our shoulders, and we get stiff. And when you go into a negotiation, you need to appear loose, relaxed, confident, and comfortable in yourself, and really open, right, to all the possibilities. And managing your emotions can be tough in that moment. So figuring out a way to do that in advance, however it works for you, is going to be really key. Being pleasant and open is always the best way to go. And direct and clear, right? So we want to be pleasant, we want to be open, direct, and clear. And then listen openly with your body, what I've been talking about, right? So you don't want to show up to a negotiation and cross your arms or really have this closed, tight position. You want to seem comfortable, relaxed. And then something that always happens to me that I want you to know about is watch your facial expressions. So I have this thing that I do in the center of my eyebrows where I crinkle my eyebrow, and sometimes people can misinterpret what that means. They can take it as disagreement or objection to what they're saying. So watch your facial expressions. Remember, 70% of what you communicate is physical, is in your facial expressions, your body expressions. So be very careful with that. And then the last part, and really a critical piece, is to stay curious. Because we're sometimes on edge when we go to these conversations, we forget to ask questions. And questions are really the baseline for the beginning of the negotiation around the proposal for promotion. Again, the first meeting is not the final meeting. It does not require a yes or no. It's really your opportunity to get more information and to position yourself for the best promotion yet. So here are a couple of things that I want to warn you about as you're thinking about negotiation. There are common pitfalls, you know, as someone who has managed lots of different teams and done hiring, firing, promotions, etc. There are really two categories that come up. The first one is this question of fairness. And fairness is like a universal global trigger for about like 95% of the population. As soon as we start talking about fairness, it's completely subjective and arbitrary. So if you find yourself hearing, for example, Librada, it wouldn't be fair to give you a raise and not give one to Gina, right? All kinds of things start happening inside your body. You start to think, well, what does my promotion have to do with Gina, right? My coworker. And the truth is nothing. It has nothing to do with you. And so if questions of fairness come up, I want you to know that this is a lose-lose situation. And in this case, I want you to bypass conversations of fairness because there's no winning in that debate about what's fair or isn't fair because it's completely subjective. Instead, move on past questions of fairness to get curious about what's happening in the organization. Now, the three other points that are here that I want you to look at are, these are three common things that I've said in meetings with my own teams and that I've heard. And so the first one is there's not enough money in the budget. I'm sure many of you have heard that. We're reorganizing or downsizing. You may have heard that. I hope you haven't, but if you have, it's very common. And let's revisit this in 3 months, right? So here are, like, for me, the three most common. And what I want you to know about these three things is that they're not door closers. They're actually doors waiting to be open. These are opportunities for you to ask questions and have a conversation with your supervisor about what's the status of the organization, what's really happening, right? And this is going to help you make a decision about whether to stay or go. All right. We have covered a lot of material in like record time, so I think that we should get into some case studies because I want you to see the real application of some of the questions that you might be thinking of. So let's go to the first case study, and I think we're actually going to have time for both. And I'm going to ask Librada if you could read this first case study, Lisa Ramirez.
Yes. So let's see here. So Lisa Ramirez, she's been working for the JK Foundation as a legislative assistant for about 3.5 years, and she makes about $45,000. Lisa wants to move up to an analyst position. Lisa really enjoys her work and the company and also wants to be seen in her field of healthcare. Lisa has received a number of excellent reviews at work, demonstrating her skills as a good employee and has good rapport with her supervisor. She has a wide range of interests, including the work itself, salary, more vacation time, location, degree of travel, and flexibility in working from home because of family concerns. Lisa's another 3 months out from her annual review.
Perfect. So the real question here that we're trying to figure out is how is Lisa going to position herself to get her best promotion? So Librada, what kinds of information does Lisa need to get ready for this conversation?
So there's a couple of things based on the information that you shared. One is that we want her to find out who is going to make the final decision about her promotion. But then the other is also about the financial stability of the organization. So doing some homework, asking HR, what is the process to also get promoted? So at least 3 pieces of information.
Absolutely, absolutely. So those are some of the pieces of information that she might want to collect. Now, what about this question, right? So she's still 3 months away from her annual review. And I want to ask the audience, so there's a place where you can raise your hand on the panel, and I'd like you to raise your hand on the webinar panel if you think that Lisa should wait until her annual review to talk to her supervisor about a promotion. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. So raise your hand if you think she should wait to have the conversation. And Carla, I don't know if you see any hands up.
I do not.
Okay, great. So, great. So none of you think she should wait. Fantastic. So she could wait, right? On the one hand, she's in a really great position and she's doing well at her job. She's been there for about 3.5 years. She's got great reviews. You know, so one possibility is yes, that she could wait. But the other possibility is to take advantage of getting ahead of the conversation and talking to her supervisor about the interest in having a promotion, right? Whether she decides to prioritize salary or title change, you know, these are some decisions that she'll have to make. And so when you're thinking about the cycle of the organization or the cycle of your company and how it works, sometimes organizations line up staff reviews, performance reviews, and budget cycles. Sometimes they're really close together or they overlap. And so think about if that's true, how advantageous it would be for Lisa to go have that conversation up front and really position herself in a way to get that salary or to get that title change and any other benefits that she wants. And to really go for it and ask for it up front so that her manager and supervisor has the seed already planted in their mind as they look ahead to the next budget cycle, you know, moving Lisa to another position or giving her a promotion in some other form. So those are some things that you should be thinking about. And then this last question, you know, should Lisa put feelers out for another offer? I would say that Lisa's in a great position based on the scenario and that she doesn't have to put feelers out right away. Instead, she should really engage JK Foundation and have the conversations necessary to understand what's her position and what's the possibility, right? So doing the research, finding out, you know, what's the best positioning for herself, and really capping out that last year so that she's in a great position when she goes, when she eventually decides to leave the foundation. Okay, so let's take a look at a totally different scenario. Let's see here. Okay. Librada, could you read this one as well?
Sure. So this is case study number 2, Juan Davis. Juan Davis has been working for XYZ Company as team lead for about 4.5 years, and he makes about $60,000. Juan wants to move up to managing director. He has good rapport with his team, has built several successful projects for XYZ, and has learned a lot from the work. Juan wants a larger leadership role. He has received a number of good reviews at work demonstrating skill. Juan's supervisor was recruited to another company and is leaving in 1 month. XYZ has a new president who has just started and with the board's approval will be reorganizing the company. Juan's interests are managing a team, salary increase, more vacation time, and leave to be with his son, reducing degree of travel and flexibility in working from home. So what should Juan do to position himself for the best promotion?
Absolutely. So, you know, Librada, what's the biggest negotiation hurdle that you see for Juan right now?
I would say that there's 2 actually. The first is that he has a new CEO. So when you have a new leader coming into an organization, there is automatic reorganization happening. So he still has to find out what that's going to look like and how that's going to affect his position and his opportunities for growth. And then the other is that with his supervisor, that individual is leaving in 1 month's time. So it's an opportunity and a hurdle.
Yeah, it's a huge hurdle, right? So even though he's a good employee, there are all these changes happening around him. So let's take another poll. And if anyone raises their hand, Carla, if you'd let me know. So for the audience, raise your hand if you think that Juan should put feelers out for another offer. So should he be job hunting right now? We'll just take a few seconds to give you a chance. Do we have any hands raised? Raise your hand if you think Juan should be looking for another job.
So we have 6 hands up.
Great. Awesome. So for those of you who raised your hand, absolutely, right? Juan should absolutely be job hunting while he's having the conversations in-house with the organization and while the reorganization gets started. Why? Because once the reorganization gets started, you know, companies and organizations make cuts for lots of different reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with your performance. Sometimes they make decisions because they're headed in a totally new direction. And so Juan will be in a better position with less unknowns if he has other offers on the table. It'll also make it more lucrative as he's having conversations and negotiating for, you know, the best possible promotion as he sees it. And then this question of what information does one need to prepare for the conversation, where and when can he get it, right? So he's got to talk to a few different people. He's got to talk to HR to find out the pace at which reorganization is going to happen. He should be talking to his boss before he leaves. His boss may have insights into what changes are happening at the management or senior management level or the executive level of the organization. And if he has a relationship with the president, he should be having conversations with the president to really get a sense of what might be happening. If he doesn't, then there's gonna be a limited amount of information available for him, as reorganizations tend to make senior management very cautious. So starting to look for new jobs, starting to, you know, really shift is going to be key. All right, so that's the last case study. What I really want to do now is open it up for questions. And I know that if you haven't had a chance yet, you can still type your question in the chat box, and Carla and Librada are going to be helping me field those questions.
So Anna, while folks or participants, attendees are typing in their question, I have a couple of questions just to kick us off, if that's all right.
Yeah. Good.
So okay. So one of the things that you mentioned was body language, and that's something that I completely agree that you have to be sensitive to that. But I think that a piece of that is, so you know, you hear about the research about posturing, and so how direct can you be when you're negotiating? How what is it that you want us as listeners to keep in mind about how we come across, how we project when we're asking for our requests here, when we're putting out our requests?
Absolutely. So people tend to be at two different extremes. The first extreme is people come in and are like, I want a raise, I deserve a raise, and you should give it to me now. And I'm not going to take no for an answer. And in fact, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to leave. I mean, it's a straight-on threat, right? And I would just say generally in life, people usually don't respond well to threats. So, you know, don't see it as putting all your cards on the table, because that's actually not useful. It really creates an awkward situation and may limit all the things that you could be asking for. The other extreme that people fall into is not really asking for something concrete. So, you know, John will come in and it's like, I sort of kind of think I've been doing a good job, and I sort of kind of, you know, was wondering like if I could get a raise. You know, that's also not a strong position for yourself. What you really want to do is position yourself somewhere in the middle. Somewhere where you're really talking about what your value's been and your experience with the company or the organization so far, what you really enjoyed about it, and what it is that you think you could offer going forward. And then from there, you're in a really great position to say, I'd really like a promotion, and here are some things that I've been thinking about. And usually a good manager, a good supervisor or decision maker is going to ask you, if you're someone that they really value, or if they're not going through a reorganization, they're going to ask you, okay, talk to me. Tell me about the things that you want. Tell me about why they're important to you. And really try to engage in a conversation. So you want to be clear, but you don't want to be bossy. And you definitely don't want to threaten anyone.
I like that. Be clear and not bossy.
Yes.
Not bossy.
So Anna, 4 questions have came in.
Awesome.
So the first one is, aside from the 990 forms, what are other websites or places where we can learn what others in a similar job positions make?
Yeah. There are quite a few websites out there, and I'm not going to go into them, but there are like a number of websites, and maybe we can send out a list at the end of resources, of places you can go. You know, the websites that are out there, like salary.com and some of the others, one of the tricky things is that sometimes this is stock generic information across a particular job position or industry, and I would say it's okay to check those websites out, and at the same time, I would be cautious not to rely on generic information, but instead look at what's happening within your field by talking to other people. So when I was thinking about moving, early in my career, when I moved from, an assistant role to an organizer role, I actually called around to my fellow colleagues who were in different organizations and asked them more or less, what was the range that an organizer made in their organization? What kind of benefits did they get? And don't make it just about salary, right? Really ask them, like, what are the benefits? What do they enjoy about working there? What kind of leave, right? For organizers, leave time is really critical. So if you're an organizer or a coordinator working in the community, that might be something really important. And so I would try to do that kind of comparison and see where you want to be. And then if you're really stretching to a totally different position that is at a much more senior level, you could also talk to recruiters. I have a number of recruiters in my Rolodex now at this stage of life that I call on and talk to about, what's the going rate, what's the going standard in the industry. And again, it's about thinking about what you want and what's important.
Okay. Next question. Does the negotiation have to be with your direct supervisor? What happens if that person is not available, but you are ready to move forward with negotiation?
Okay, so that's assuming that you've done the research, right, and you know who the decision maker is. I guess, if your supervisor is like on maternity leave, let's say, for example, and there's somebody else who's in charge, I might start with a conversation with human resources. I think they're a great place to really talk to about what you can do about promotion while the person is on leave. And people can be on leave. I just said maternity leave, but people could be on leave for lots of different things. Sick leave, time off with kids, paternity leave, right? It just could be so many things. So again, I would start with getting information from HR about how to take the next step. And it's going to depend on your circumstances.
Okay. Next question is, asking for a raise 2.5 years into the job too soon?
That's an interesting question. God, is it ever too early to ask for a raise? My heart says never. But I have to say I might be a little bit of a unicorn in this way, in that negotiation is something that comes very natural for me. I like to ask about lots of things often. I think I probably negotiate with someone every single day about something, including like my barista. So I would say if you feel like you've done a great job and there's something that you need and you've done the research and it's possible to get the raise, I would ask. And if they can't give you the raise, then, and you really need to move up to another category financially, then I would start looking, right? I would start positioning myself to move to that next role. And you may need to stretch to another role in order to get the promotion. You know, sometimes there are caps on certain positions. You know, in a few places that I've worked at, there were caps for organizers, caps for managing directors, caps for executive directors, and caps for the president. So it's really important to know what those caps are. And if you've capped out of your position, then you're really talking about transitioning somewhere else, or looking for a different position inside the organization.
Okay. And Anna, I will add that doing that also, one, you start finding out what's possible, so
Yes.
that you find out sooner rather than later what is a cap. But then two, also it's you showing initiative and by broaching the conversation, and then finding out, okay, so let's say you thought you did your research, and in the conversation you realize, you know what, there are some additional pieces that I need to get. So then negotiate in that conversation. So when can you have this? When's the next time that you can revisit it? So that way then you go in even more prepared, sharper, so that again you're closer to that yes, or finding out yes, and this is what I need to do then.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's always a yes. Under every no, there's a yes. And it might not come from your supervisor. It might come from your next job, right? So we're looking for the yes, and we have to ask, and ask often.
Great. What should we be doing throughout the year to be ready for negotiation in the future? For example, a list of accomplishments.
List of accomplishments. Yeah. Okay. So this is a tricky question. One is you should be trying to obviously meet or exceed your goals. And depending on the organization and the culture, how they see meeting and exceeding goals may be different. So for example, I worked briefly at a large international organization, and meeting your goals was considered successful, you know, and people who exceeded their goals, that was sort of like, wow, like way out of the box. So if you've met your goals, and if the culture, you know, sees that as success, then, you know, that's a great way to set yourself up. Another way, just to recap some of the things we've talked about, is the relationships, right? Who do you have relationships with in the organization, and are they authentic? So in my case, as I moved up from being a managing director to serving on an executive committee for the executive director, I really tried to position myself to have good relationships with everybody on the executive committee. Because if I'm asking for a promotion, all of those people are going to weigh in most likely at the executive level into whether I'm doing a good job. So it's not enough to have good relationships with your team or your department, but it's good to be seen across the organization as a good worker, a good partner, a good relationship builder, a good communicator.
Great. Next question is, how would you go about bargaining a salary when accepting a job offer if you have never worked for the organization before, or should you even do that?
Yeah. I have a rule of thumb when I'm looking for a new job. So I think I fall into that Bureau of Labor Statistics category. I think I've moved jobs every 5 years, 5 or 6 years. And my rule of thumb, under like keeping that in mind, was always to try to move up 20% from job to job. That's including a title change and added responsibilities. That was my aspirational goal. I may have not always hit it, but that was basically my rule of thumb, and it's actually served me really well. Being able to say, you know, if I was making 40,000, being able to say I'd like to now make 60,000. You know, that was critical. Now, I want you to know that if you're thinking a lot about salary promotion, and you're thinking in that example for, you know, so 40, let's say you make 45,000 and you want to jump to 60,000, to that 60,000 bracket, there are tax implications if you do that. So even though like you might see a larger number, right? Total salary number. Each state has, different state and local taxes that they collect, and so 60,000 may only, end up being another $2,000 or $3,000 in your, in your check. Overall, right, over the course of a year after taxes. So you just have to calculate the numbers and go to like the IRS website and really find out what's it going to mean if you move, in real dollars, if you move from one bracket to another. You might actually be better off staying under 60, or if you're going to reach over 60, there are a whole another set of things you need to be considering as you grow your salary.
Great. So next question is, so I have somewhat of an idea of what the decision maker's values are, but would like to make sure. How do I ask her without freaking her out? Does this happen in the first conversation?
Yeah, right? It's not like, hey, Librada, what are your values, right? Like if Librada is my supervisor. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that. I think that one way to ask is what's most important to you at this time, right? What are you hoping for our department or our team, however it's defined at your company? What are some changes you'd really like to see happen? How can I be a part of those, right? So really getting curious and finding out what they're thinking and their vision for the work is a great way to find out what's important to them right now. What else, Librada?
Well, and I would add that to pay attention, especially if you've been working there for a little while, just pay attention to what is it that they ask you about in your conversations with them. Are they really focused on, so how many partners are you connecting with, or the dollar amount that we're getting in grants or fund development? I mean, listen to what they're asking for you to share, and even what is it that they're noticing if maybe you're not meeting the expectation, or what they're pushing you to, what are the metrics that they're using, because all of that are indicators for when you talk to them and negotiate, this is the language, these are some of the phrases that you want to use in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question is, if I'm planning on moving to a different organization in less than 6 months, should I still ask for a little change, pay increase? I have been doing more tasks than I was when I was hired to do, even performing a supervisory role, but have not been compensated for it. FYI, I'm currently working for a political appointee, and I'm expecting management and major staff changes close to the election.
Okay. So this is an interesting one. Okay, so you're working for a political appointee and there are going to be changes. So I would really, this is where I think sitting down and figuring out what you want your next step to be, and where do you see your career going is critical. So, particularly as we see changes, right? So soon we're going to have a new president in the White House. So if you're working inside government, federal government, or at that track, and you're at a level with an appointee where there might be a change that directly affects you. And this could also be true if you're working at a nonprofit, right? And there's going to be a new president, a new executive director. Everything could change, right? What's important can change, priorities, programs, etc. So that's a great time, as soon as those announcements happen, to take stock and figure out what's really important for you in this moment. If a salary bump is going to significantly impact your career going forward, whether you stay or go, then you probably should ask, and the worst thing that can happen is that they say no. And the thing about no is you have to just get comfortable with it, right? Like we said, under the no, there's a yes waiting somewhere for you. So think about what's really important now. Maybe it's important to position yourself, because there will be a new appointee, with a different title. So maybe a title change is of greater value to you in the coming months, or different responsibilities. Now, one thing I will say is when you do get increased responsibilities, that was the opportunity to ask for a bump up. right? So anytime an employer or supervisor has asked me, can you take on this role? And that's the time to ask, for how long do you want me to take on this role? You know, will there be either a temporary or permanent pay increase depending on how long you're taking it on for? And I have negotiated that even during times of reorganization. So people who say it's not possible, it is possible depending on what the role is and the situation is and what is it that they need in the moment. So I'd consider all of those things. And again, follow the steps that are in this program. If you follow those steps, you'll just have so much more information and the questions will answer themselves.
Those are all the questions that came in.
Awesome. And we're right on time. I just thank you for participating, and I want to turn it over to Janet.
Thank you, Ana. Thank you, Librado, for an amazing presentation. On behalf of the CHCI Alumni Association, I want to thank everybody who's on the webinar for being so engaged. Again, thank you to our sponsor, State Farm, for supporting these continuing leadership opportunities for CHCI alumni and friends. And make sure to join us for the next webinar. It's on July 21st with Librada Estrada. The focus will be on managing versus leading, how to cultivate your individual power regardless of your title. So we hope you will join us. When the webinar ends, there will be a short evaluation. Please fill it out as it will help us continue to develop our programming. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.